good turnout, and I appreciate you all being here tonight to listen to what we have to talk about. Since we are taping this, it would be helpful if you have questions during the presentation, if you'd remember those. There's been note cards passed out. You had those availability. If you need one, you can raise your hand. And at the end of the presentation, we'll collect those and answer questions at that time, so it'll be an orderly presentation for Metro TV. I appreciate your cooperation on that. We have in our audience tonight Councilman Bill Hollander. We appreciate him being here. He's been very helpful to MSD through the process of our consent decree and things going on in his district, and we appreciate him being here. So without further ado, we'll get on to tonight's topic to talk about the Ohio River Tunnel, which is an innovative alternative to 3 CSO basins. So tonight, we'll talk about an overview of the project, conceptual layout, and where we're going to go from tonight. This project, the Ohio River Tunnel overview, is to combine the volume that would have been in 3 basins that we've been out in the public talking about for the last year or two into one single deep rock tunnel. So instead of constructing 3 individual basins across the downtown area, and it's not going to show it, but the 3 circles here, we will combine that volume into one longer tunnel that will be underground. As of September 30th of this year is when the board approved this change to go to the deep underground tunnel. So we have been out last week and talked to people that we talked to about Story and Main earlier this year. We've been at this location to talk about Lexington and Payne, so we're coming back as a follow-up to those introductory meetings. So 3 basins, downtown at 13th and Rowan, the circle on the left, Story and Main and Lexington and Payne will be eliminated by this consolidated tunnel solution. So there were a number of factors that were considered that resulted in this change, a significant change. We've had several meetings. We've talked to community leaders. They've heard about our basins in the downtown area. We've met with them. We've had input from public meetings. We've been here and again at the School for the Blind Publishing House. We've had meetings for the Story and Main. We've considered the traffic disruptions along key commercial corridors downtown, Main Street, economic impacts to the downtown businesses and the emerging Butchertown district. These basins are in the downtown, right in the heart of downtown, and again in Butchertown, as you know, is re-emerging. There is still the consent decree mandates to complete these projects by the end of December of 2020. And as we think back over the last decade or so, tunnel construction has become more readily designed and achieved in more areas across the country have performed and built tunnels. So there's more tunnel boring machines. The price is more competitive as you have more equipment that can do the work. It eliminates the challenges of construction and final land use planning on a brownfield site. And a number of these sites have contaminated soils on them of these basins. And so when we do this tunnel, we're not encumbered with doing a lot of remediation on a site that could cost a lot of money for the ratepayers, and let alone the time for permitting and all the impacts that might be involved with working on a contaminated site. As I said, we've been out to the community several times before. For the Story and Main Basin, we had an orientation meeting back in June of 2015 and the conceptual design in February of this year. And for Lexington and Payne, we were out in January of this year and again in April of this year at the very location that we're at tonight. So let's talk a little about this tunnel layout. Some facts about this tunnel. It's basically the temporary storage of diluted sewer water diluted with rainwater during wet weather events. It's approximately 13,000 feet in length from downtown running east. It'll be about 175 to 200 feet below ground, minimum internal diameter of 20 feet, and a storage volume of 31.8 million gallons, which is equivalent to what the 3 basins in total would have contained as well. And I would also say, to add to that, on the 175 feet to 200 feet below ground, the tunnel itself will vary from 70 feet to 100 feet in solid rock. So it'll have 40 to 70 feet of rock above it, solid rock. This is a conceptual alignment. You can see on the left, that's about 13th and Rowan downtown, just west of the 9th Street exit off of I-64. The red dots represent combined sewer overflows, and those are locations where during rain events, the old combined sewers are overwhelmed with volume due to the rain. When it's not raining, the sewage stays in the sewer pipe and makes it to the Morris Foreman Water Quality Treatment Center. But during rain events, those pipes are overwhelmed, and that's where that sewage and rainwater leaves the system and gets its way into the waterways of Jefferson County, either Beargrass Creek or ultimately the Ohio River. And that's what we're trying to do, is keep sewage out of the river. That's public health and public safety concerns, which is why we're doing this. So again, the tunnel runs about 13,000 feet from downtown east towards the end of that green line is basically at Lexington Road, just east of Home of the Innocents. And again, those red dots along the east side here are along the improved Beargrass Creek channel. That's that section of Beargrass Creek that's concrete. There are several components that make up this Ohio River Tunnel project. It's the tunnel itself, the Lexington Payne Combined Sewer Overflow Interceptor, the Story and Main Connector, and the downtown CSO Interceptor, and the Rowan Pump Station and Force Main. And again, the consent decree deadline of December 31st, 2020 has not changed, and not changing with this project. And I would also add that those interceptors, the Lexington and Payne Interceptor, the Story and Main Connector, and the downtown CSO Interceptor, those are basically unchanged. We would still have constructed those if we were still building the basins, because that's those red dots where we have to collect where the water would leave the system and get into a stream. That component of the project remains the same. The difference is the basins are going away. We're going to store and convey in the tunnel. For the Lexington and Payne CSO interceptor facts, again, that would be on the east side or the right-hand side of that map I showed. There are 9 existing CSOs. Those are where it leaves the system and goes into Beargrass Creek in that concrete channel. When it rains, that's where it overflows to. The interceptor will be below the concrete channel of the South Fork of Beargrass Creek. Very analogous to the interceptor that was done upstream of the Logan Basin. That was in a concrete channel for most of that as well. So we have experience of building below the concrete channel. This particular interceptor is about 5,000 feet in length. It's from East Broadway to East Main, and that pipe, that just to collect those overflows from those 9 CSOs, it's about 36 inches to 102 inch diameter pipe. And again, those are the red dots represent the CSO locations. Again, areas where the water, when it rains, leaves the sewer system and gets into Beargrass Creek. The gold star there at the end is a drop shaft. So the interceptor is closer to the surface. The tunnel, remember, is 200 feet deep. So that drop shaft is where, when that interceptor collects those 9 CSO locations, then it'll drop into the tunnel at that location. The one at the top is the drop shaft that would be associated with the Story and Main interceptor. For the Story and Main, there are 2 existing CSOs that would flow to the tunnel. That collector would be about 200 feet in length. Again, the tunnel's almost right underneath that, so they're not very far apart, so there's not very much pipe length to connect those two. It's near the intersection of Franklin Street and Buchanan Street, and that'll be a 36-inch pipe. It is congested there. There is a concrete flood wall, a lot of utilities in the way, so it's just, I don't want to make it sound like it's an easy project. It's still difficult at that location. It's just not as much pipe and not as many CSOs to collect from. Again, there's the drop shaft. That's roughly at Buchanan Street, and the 2 CSOs that I just spoke about. Again, the tunnel is still weaving its way to where it can be connected with these drop shafts to intercept and to collect those CSO overflows. Now for the downtown area, there are 12 CSOs downtown that we need to convey to the tunnel. The pipe length there would be about 2,000 feet. And it's mainly the north-south streets between Main Street and River Road. I'll show a map of that in just a second. And the pipe size there is from 12 inch to 48 inch. You can see here again, we've got the I-64 ramp there, which is right here. And the CSOs that are primarily north of Main Street. And you know that Main Street is a lot higher than River Road, so we will collect from those running downstream towards River Road. And again, get to the tunnel. There will be a drop shaft for those that are east of the ramp, and then a drop shaft on the west side of the ramp to collect those 4 that are on the west side. We had not been out to talk about 13th and Rowan Basin, but originally we were going to go down Main Street with a micro tunnel. And we found out that, number one, that would have disrupted traffic for a couple of years. A lot of the old basements that are constructed, those old buildings downtown, go out into the middle of Main Street due to old coal shafts when the coal would be delivered and you'd put that into the buildings for heat. So there were a lot of additional problems with going down Main Street, another advantage to go to the deep tunnel solution. Another component of this tunnel project is the Rowan Pump Station. So at the end of the tunnel, the low end of the tunnel, where we've collected all of these overflows from 22 CSOs, there will be a pump station at the end of the tunnel. So there'll be an above-ground building there just to house controls, electronics, that type of thing, on the northwest corner of 12th and Rowan Street intersection. The orange diamond shape there is the triangle shape is the pump station, and then there'll be a short force main for when after the rain event, that combined sewage combined with rainwater after the rain event, and our sewers have the capacity to receive that flow that previous to this project would have gone to the creek or the Ohio River, we have now contained in the tunnel. So after the rain event, and we have capacity back in the sewer, we'll empty out the tunnel, put it back into the collection system for treatment at Morris Foreman. So again, you can see it's just pretty basic that we're intercepting flows that would have gone to the stream to affect public health and public safety, and we're returning that back to the system when we have the capacity to treat it. The EPA is currently reviewing this change. It's not finalized yet. We've started the conceptual designs. We'll continue coordination with our partners at Metro, downtown, the community, continue public update meetings as the project progresses. I don't have much more information than what I've given tonight. But MSD has come a long way in the last few years about outreach and transparency, and we will commit and we will be back out to the community as we have more details and more information about this. The consent decree deadline still remains, as I've said several times, December 31st of 2020. Just an overview schedule. This is as of tonight. Things could change by a quarter or so, other than the deadline won't change. We still need to be done. But as far as starting, the tunnel could start as early as it needs to start by the summer of next year, with completion by the spring of 2020. And again, all these projects, the pump station needs to be done by the summer of 2020 so we can meet that deadline of operationally complete by December 31st of 2020. Now, there may be some restoration or something around the pump station that we need to do at the end, but as long as it's functioning, we've met the intent of the consent decree. So I know you're going to have some questions. We've anticipated some questions, and I'll entertain some of those right now. Will MSD purchase the River Metals recycling at 1371 Lexington Road property or be performing any construction activities on that property? And the answer is no. We will not be doing that. We won't be on that site. We won't be needing that site. What will be the impact to neighbors of the project during construction? I can't give you a percentage, but a whole lot less than if we were building 3 huge basins at each location. In fact, the Rowan Basin would have been about 10 million gallons. The Story and Main Basin would have been about 8 million gallons, and the Lexington Payne Basin was going to be about 14 million gallons. So that would have been a lot of time and construction activity on particular sites, trucks leaving each of those sites for a 2 or 3 year period. So the disruption of the tunnel, where the work can go on even when it's raining, snowing, whatever, that tunnel being 200 feet and 60 to 100 feet in rock, rain or shine, light or dark, that tunnel machine can work. So it should be a whole lot less disruption than the alternative of 3 independent projects. Will there be any visible above ground structures? Again, down at the low end of the tunnel, there'll be a pump station at 13th and Rowan, so there'll be a building above grade there to house some of our electronics and motor control centers, things of that nature. Will there be any odors associated with the tunnel? Not because it's a tunnel. Typically, as I've said, we are collecting these overflows when it rains, so it's a large percentage of what we're collecting is rainwater with a little bit of sewage in it, and we're containing it for just until the rain event is over and we have capacity in the sewer, so we do not anticipate odor with this. Other cities have spent millions of dollars putting odor control. If you've seen other tapes or been to meetings before, it's the same thing I've said and others have said several times. MSD is proactively designing for odor control so that should we find the need, we could easily install it, but we're not going to spend the millions of dollars, commit to that, because our ratepayers are paying for all this. At this time, we'll commit to the design so that it would be ready should we need it, but there have been other cities who have spent millions of dollars and have never turned their odor control on. Again, because it's highly diluted sewage, it's primarily rainwater. So we have a fiscal responsibility to our ratepayers not to spend money wisely and not to foolishly spend it on something that we may not need. But we want to be wise about it and be prepared for it. With that concludes my comments. If there are any questions, if you have them written down on some cards, we'd be happy to collect those and I'll entertain those. I'll go ahead and look at these when is there any on that side? Will the tunnel change or affect the floodplain around the river metal site? No, it won't. Only has to do with rainwater falling from the sky. We have the flood protection system, and this is not part of the flood protection system. And we're not filling in the floodplain or taking away from the floodplain. Can you discuss the geology surrounding the tunnel? Is it above or below the mini aquifer? That's a great question, Lisa. Again, we've had a number of rock quality studies in this area for the tunnel. We'd be foolish not to do that. We had found that the quality of the rock is some of the highest, and part of that has to do with its impermeability, and we are going to have 60 to 70 feet above the rock. So the aquifer is not in the rock. The aquifer is above the rock in the alluvial type soils. So we have very good rock soundness. Structurally, it should be fine. I don't anticipate any problems. We will be lining, as the tunnel boring machine goes through and it comes back out, we will line that tunnel with concrete or grout, but we will not be affecting the aquifer. How we join the pipe, how we keep it sealed. The tunnel itself is just a continuous bore through solid rock. And again, then we come in and we grout. So we're not putting pipe in the ground where we have joints that can leak. It's in solid rock, and again, we'll grout the inside of that. Now the pipe that's near surface, that pipe that is below Beargrass Creek or downtown on those CSOs connecting to the interceptors, those will be pipe that we have standards that we test to for infiltration and exfiltration. Again, downtown, they're on a pretty steep slope. I don't anticipate that they would flow full or hold water very long to even allow for exfiltration. But again, the whole part of it's taking water that's mixed with sewage and getting into this tunnel. So and that's the intent of that. And again, we test those pipes. Will the property at Lexington and Grinstead still be used? If we're talking about the I-64 and Grinstead project, you notice I haven't mentioned that tonight. We'll have more meetings on that project. This tunnel does not extend that far. That project doesn't have some of the constraints. It's a clean site that was owned by the state and the Federal Highway Department. So we've already made arrangements for that. We're far along in the design. So this tunnel will not affect that. And it would be probably not cost effective to go that much farther with the tunnel to connect to that site. Is there a need for the Jim Porter property associated with the tunnel? Again, that Jim Porter property was purchased for the I-64 and Grinstead CSO Basin, and so it's not associated with the tunnel. And again, that property was purchased because it was out of the floodplain and can be a good staging area for the contractor while he builds that facility. Once that facility is built, MSD will use whatever means necessary. It could be sold. We don't have any other use for that. So again, being wise about the ratepayers' money, what we spent for that, we could probably easily recoup when that project is done. Now, will you be using the existing buildings on Rowan Street for the pump station controls? No, we will be building a new pump station control building. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
There was a significant survey that was done on use and what the neighborhood would like to see. Is that published where we can see it?
I think yes, those things that we took on that night when we put them up here on the board for the Lexington and Payne site, yes, I'm sure that is available. Again, we're not going to use that property, and we're not going to purchase that property, so it's not ours to control or whatever, but the information that the community would like to see there is certainly available for anyone who would like to see that. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Currently, the property on River Meadows has a bridge that floods often that you all come and clean out truckloads full of debris that gets stuck there. Mm-hmm. Is MSD going to address that bridge in any way since they are now not buying the property?
Well, again, we don't own that property. We're not purchasing that property, and I can't speak to what we're doing with that bridge. We don't own it, so I'd say if we've been cleaning it out and I don't know, not in that department. I don't know whether that continues, doesn't continue, what the issues are, and I'm not responsible for that.
Well, it does put the businesses at risk that are right around there, such as Headliners.
That's on private. It's on private property, so I mean, the owner of the property, I guess, could address that. I don't know. Anything else? There's a lot of things that people could be doing on a Tuesday night, on a beautiful Tuesday night, and the interest in Public Health and MSD coming out. Several of you have been here for all the meetings, and I truly appreciate that. It's a pleasure to have people who are interested in the community and what we're doing, so I appreciate that. Did get another question, so stay tuned. What's the maximum inches of rainfall that the system will handle? We don't have all the design parameters. We haven't finished the tunnel sizing at this time. We know that on an equivalent volume basis, about a 20-foot diameter tunnel for that length would hold the volume that was going to be held in those 3 basins. Each of those basins had CSOs associated with them that had certain volumes. Now that they're all going to one, we could get a lot of rain in one area that would have filled a basin that if we didn't get downtown, maybe we could hold more than what that basin would have been. So we haven't worked through all those parameters of where the water might be during a storm event. So we can talk about what the volume is, but I'm not prepared tonight to talk about all the details of a detailed design on that. But we do know it will hold the equivalent of what the 3 basins would have. We will be having public notices on our website. We'll do mailers, we'll do email, all the social media that we do to get out for future public meetings. I think this is a project that is going to be exciting for the community and for us, and we look forward to doing that and having you all as helpful partners in that. Thank you very much.